it takes a change of a state of mind to tell yourself, no, this is a plan B day. I have to look at that list of must-dos, cross out anything that is not truly urgent. Like, you do have to pick your kids up from school, but maybe somebody else could help, and make a plan for how you can rest and what is really necessary that day and what isn't, and how you can get help.
Welcome to Invisible Not Broken. Today we're talking about practical tips for managing chronic fatigue, parenting with chronic illness, and using books for emotional wellness. Our host, Monica, is joined by author Sue Jackson, who lives with ME/CFS and Lyme disease.
Sue, I'm really excited to have you here. We just had a whole discussion about your name, and it just reminded me of a little thing I read on Pinterest about sick kids and kids who are sick when they're younger, and they do a lot of reading, but not a lot of interacting. And I'm definitely one of them because we always mispronounce words that everyone else gets.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm just going to ask you you'd think like with your name, I'd be like, yes, I absolutely know how to pronounce this because I am a normal human being, and I am not. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you. You had sent me a message. I think we've been trying to get this done for, 6 months now? 4 months?
Something like that, yes. We ran into a few challenges along the way.
This is the joy of chronic illness world.
Yes.
But you are a writer, you are a mom, you are dealing with chronic illness. So it's like, we are going to have so much to chat about. So if you feel comfortable talking about what chronic illnesses you're dealing with, I would love to just kind of like give people like a little idea. I'm sorry if you can hear my chickens in the background, but right now they're summoning their ancestors, and there is nothing I can do about it.
I thought that was maybe cats, but okay, it's chickens.
No, the cats are oddly quiet right now. I mean, I guess I could go up there with some chicken and start eating it in front of them to like remind them how they should be behaving, but they don't seem to understand it. So they're calling for their ancestors right now, and it's just what it is in a form.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll try to give you the very quick version because it's a very long story. Back in 2002, I was a very active, busy young mom. I was 37. And, typical story for people with ME/CFS. I was perfectly healthy. And then suddenly I was very sick. So like most people with ME/CFS, I can point to the exact day that my illness began. March 2nd, 2002. We'd had a really busy day the day before, Saturday, but normal. We had 2 little boys. We took them to the Y. I did an exercise class. We cleaned the house. We had people over for dinner. And going to sleep that night, my throat started to hurt. And I woke up the next morning just feeling horrible. Worst sore throat of my life, achy all over, exhausted. And I thought, well, I guess I've picked up some virus. I've got a flu or something. And of course, the end of this story, it never went away. And that is very often how ME/CFS starts. Of course, I didn't know what it was. And it was absolutely, I never would have even considered that I was sick forever now. I thought it was just a routine virus. And so what followed was a year of seeing doctors, getting every blood test imaginable 2 or 3 times, and having one specialist after another say, I'm sorry, I have no idea what's wrong with you. And finally, about a year later, and during this time, I had some days when I felt like I had a horrible flu and couldn't get up off the couch, but then other days when I felt almost normal. And I'd jump right back into all my old activities. And I could not figure out what these weird ups and downs were, why that was happening to me. And I went to see a new primary care physician for the first time. And I went in there with my 3-ring binder and all my lab tests from the last year, all my graphs of how I felt and these strange ups and downs that I couldn't understand. And she listened. She took one look at my information and she said, I'm pretty sure I know what's wrong with you. She said, because I have other patients who have this. She said, I think you have an immune disorder that's known as chronic fatigue syndrome. And like most people hearing that, I thought, she's just trying to blow me off. That's not a real thing. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds trivial. And I thought, she doesn't understand how sick I've been. But, she said, we can keep running tests if you want, but I'm pretty sure this is what you have. And I'd like to help you treat it. And at first I was, no, run more tests. That's not it, But then I went home and I looked it up. and I found the CDC's website on chronic fatigue syndrome, and I started crying. It was the first thing I had seen in a year of searching that exactly matched my symptoms. And then I went to the library, went to the section where they had two books on it, sat down on the floor because I couldn't stand, and, pulled those books off the shelf, took those home and read them. And again, I was just in tears for recognizing my own experience, for the first time in a year. And I was so, so, so lucky to have found one of the very few primary care physicians who recognized ME/CFS, who knew what it was, and even more astounding, she knew how to treat it. She's not an expert, but, even 20 years ago, she knew some of the basics of how to help me, which is amazing because most people if they get a proper diagnosis of ME/CFS, they're told there are no treatments and there's nothing that can be done. So I consider myself very lucky for having found her. Some of the treatments started helping. I was starting to feel a little bit better and able to do some things. Just understanding the disease helped a lot because I came to understand the primary characteristic of it is this intolerance to even mild exertion. And suddenly I understood those seemingly random good days and bad days. And I came to understand that if I did too much, I'd be back on the couch again. So that helped a lot. And then about 2 years later, both of our sons got ME/CFS as well. They were only 6 and 10 at the time. They were just little kids. The younger son and my husband had had a virus during the summer. We don't know what it was, just something with a bad cough that kind of stuck with them. My older son and I didn't get it, but that was clearly the trigger for them. ME/CFS is often triggered by an infection because from then on, we could see in them the same crash after exercise and similar. But it's one thing to go through it yourself. It's absolutely devastating to see your children, particularly little children, go from being carefree and joyful to not being able to play with their friends or go to school. It's horrible. Luckily, that was a long time ago. My youngest son, after 10 years of milder illness, his was always milder than mine and my older son. He recovered completely. He's 26 now, perfectly healthy, works full time, very, very, very active, and he's doing great. My older son does still have ME/CFS. Also, around 2008, I got Lyme disease, and around 2006, he got Lyme disease. We did not realize, though, for 3 years that he also had 2 other tick infections. So discovering that was a whole nother layer of difficulty. And those 3 tick infections, particularly the 2 that had gone untreated for so long, had made him much, much worse. So he's still dealing with the tick infections and ME/CFS, but we just celebrated his 30th birthday. He is working full time and loving it. And at his birthday, he told us he's feeling the best he has in his whole life. So that's good news. That's where we are now. And I was doing very well at the beginning of this year, starting with the treatments my primary care physician helped me with. But when your kids are sick, that's a lot of motivation. And, I did everything I could to do all the research, go to the best doctors, find out whatever we could. So through all of that, I've improved as well. It's talking to this audience is different because, when I say I'm doing better, that I'm still dealing with a lot. When you say that to healthy people, they think you're better. So, yeah. The beginning of this year was the best 6 months I had had in years through a number of treatments from last year. And then, as you know, I got COVID in early July. So last time I had it, it knocked me out for 6 months. I think I'm on a better trajectory this time, but it's been 8 weeks now and I am still really run down, I'm needing like 10 to 11 hours of sleep a night. Just feeling really wiped out still a lot of the time. Definitely my stamina's not back to where it was. So, and that's a whole nother thing now. Dealing with COVID is like it's a whole nother layer to life with chronic illness. I know you got it this year too, right? So
Not this year, but we had it last year. And if anyone else out there is Ehlers-Danlos and you got COVID, I'm so sorry because the rib dislocations are real when you're coughing. It's brutal. And the long COVID, I'm definitely going to want to talk to you about. But you gave me a lot to go on, and I do want to unpack some of it, and it's wonderful. Thank you. But I want to make sure we don't lose some of this information you've given,
Right.
because this is a lot of really interesting stuff here. I wanted to go back to how organized you are.
okay.
And I want to know how you were this organized before becoming sick, that you knew to create data, because it's a real issue in chronic illness getting people to listen to you. And they're mostly just going with vibes because it's like, oh, I just feel horrible. Oh, I'm just tired. I'm tired all the time, which is valid. But if you don't have data, like a journal or something that actually shows like what's going on, that gives people a bit more understanding of, do you just generally feel run down, or like, I couldn't get out of bed today, I was in this much pain today. How did you know to do that?
I am an analytical person by nature. My background is in chemical engineering. I have an
I think I get it now. I was an artist. That was not a part of I was all vibes.
So ironically, because I've heard, this BS that chronic fatigue syndrome is caused by stress and things like that, I was actually in a really chill part of my life when I got sick. I had taken a break from my job and from my career just to slow life down and stay home with the kids for a couple of years. I planned to go back full time and, I wasn't able to. But so I did have that background. And also, I'm just an analytical person. I mean, even now when I set goals, I've got spreadsheets and,
I'm so jealous. I wish I was more like this. You're amazing.
I have spreadsheets for everything. But to your point about getting diagnosed, and this is only audio, right? You don't post videos?
Would like to post video, but if you don't want video and that makes you uncomfortable, we won't do it.
Okay, because I was going to say I could show you the way I keep track of things so that I can show my doctors. I've got calendars.
In that case, would you be interested in just sharing screenshots with us of what, and we can redact whatever you don't like, but we can always show people on the website. So if you are listening to this audio, just go over to our website, invisiblenotbroken.com, and we'll put this into our show notes so you can like have some templates on some ways to do this. Because if it's not natural for you, which it is not natural for me,
right?
This might be a really good way to show. One of the other questions I have for you is, with young children, they don't understand, I can't do this, I can't move. And when you have a disorder that activity lays you out, any child under the age of 5 is pretty generally, most kids under the age of 5, my kids under the age of 5 were not restful creatures. And there was no mercy for mommy can't get out of bed today. How did you handle parenting when the physicals can make you exhausted, but kids don't get that?
Right. So, I mean, there were two distinct challenges. The first, when it was only me sick. And as you say, my younger son was only about 4 when I got sick. And it was definitely hard for him to understand. My older son was in school by then, but my younger son being home with me, and he was one of those constantly active kids, and he's still that way as an adult, doesn't like to sit still, always busy. So it was very difficult. He gave up his nap right about the time I started to need one.
Not fair.
No. So, believe me, there were plenty of days where, I would turn a video on and lie down on the couch and just hope to catch a tiny nap while he was watching a video. And, lots of times we spent just doing quiet things, but it was a big, big shift for him. And then when they got sick as well, I mean, that's what... It's very frustrating when I hear like doctors or worse, school professionals doubting a child's illness. Because if you see your child go from this exuberant, energetic kid to suddenly, they can't do anything but lie like a limp rag on the couch and watch TV, there is something wrong. And, so they learned, it helped that I knew what was going on. Although, believe me, we didn't want to admit that our kids had this at first, but it became obvious. And since my older son was the sicker one, I took him to a pediatric specialist in New York State. And the more we learned about it, I think knowledge is power, and it is so important, to learn as much as you can about whatever your disease is, because the more you know and understand it, the better you can live with it. And that was certainly true with the children as well.
What did you learn that was the most helpful? Was there any piece of information that really like that? I'm writing that down.
I think the big thing with MECFS is just learning about that exertion intolerance and figuring out where your own limits are, which is different for every person. And, and it can...
How did you figure out your limits? I feel like that's such an important conversation for everyone, because I don't know if you feel that pressure, but as my kids are almost the very similar ages. So when they were little, it just was so much pressure to run my business, to be the good wife, the good mother, the good friend, the good daughter, and the amount of everything that was like the responsibilities. I'm still fighting against that sense of responsibility and throwing my body at those responsibilities.
Right.
How did you find a mid-ground?
Well, I think it comes back to the data again.
You're going to get me into like being analytical, and I don't know how to do that.
So my system is very, very simple. I've got a monthly calendar that I print out, generic from the internet, that I print out for each month. I print, all 12 months at the beginning of the year. Before bed at night, I jot down in the upper corner a number from 1 to 5 of how I felt. Wait, it's backwards. In the upper corner, a number 1 to 5 of how much exertion I had that day. In the lower left corner, a number from 1 to 5 of how I felt, where 1 is good and 5 is, can't do anything. So it's probably a backwards scale, but that's what I did 22 years ago. So I stuck with it. So that allows you to see patterns. And I added the exertion rating once I learned about the exertion intolerance. So I learned over time that, and I rolled stress into that rating as well. So I've got a 1 to 5 on exertion and a 1 to 5 on stress. And if combined, those are 8 or higher, that's too much for me. And so, by keeping track like that, you can tell over time what's too much and what you can handle. Although, of course, just to keep things interesting, it can be different every day of the week. But it gives you a general idea. If I'm feeling pretty good, this is what I can handle. And I think the other big, big, big learning that honestly I am still trying to teach myself 22 years later is to listen to your body. And, certain symptoms, if I get certain symptoms, I need to just ditch all the plans, lie on the couch, take care of myself. And even now, this is so hard to do. I'm kind of I was anyway, I'm kind of a driven person. I like to be productive. I like to get things done. There are a million things I want to do, and it's very easy for me to overdo. So even now, it's hard sometimes to listen to my body and, know that I have to not give up, but give in to what my body is telling me, listen to it. And I found in the beginning, I was just reading an old blog post this morning. I write a monthly newsletter, and I was putting an old blog post reference in there. And it was about how sometimes you wake up and you've got all these plans and your body just says no, and you keep trying to push. No, I have to do this. There are these things you think you have to do that day. So there's a whole chapter in my book called the Plan B Day. And this is probably my favorite hack, if you will, or, tip to when you wake up feeling like horrible and you can't do the things you meant to do. It takes a change of a state of mind to tell yourself, no, this is a Plan B day. I have to look at that list of must-dos, cross out anything that is not truly urgent. Like you do have to pick your kids up from school, but maybe somebody else could help, and make a plan for how you can rest and what is really necessary that day and what isn't, and how you can get help.
That's one of the big issues, is how you can get help. I count myself as extremely privileged at this point in my life. When my son was little, I was not, and I had no help. So to recover from surgery with a toddler was an experience. And it's wonderful when we have help, but I think we need to work harder as an entire community to have different ways to help people who may not know how to reach out or who don't have those resources. And I don't know how that, I just know it has to, because I remember being like in my early 20s with a toddler and being chronically ill and recovering from surgery and having my surgeon tell me, I do the surgery on football players and they don't get up for 6 weeks. And I'm like, that little guy is not going to let me not get up for 6 weeks. And just like a little aside for anyone who has toddlers and you can't move, I gave him like a little film camera, a film camera, but like a little, it was one of the first digital camera things. I was a photographer, that's what I did for a living. And I just let him walk around the house, and he was like 2, and he would just take pictures of things. And that way I could hear exactly where he was in the house, and he would come running back to me every like 2 minutes to show me all the photos.
Oh, that's great.
I still don't know how he survived that time, but somehow he is a grown adult who is totally surviving and thriving despite or in spite of me. But when you're talking about these Plan B days, I love how you phrase it. We call them darling slug days here.
I like that.
It was because my daughter she's a lot younger than my son, but with my chronic illness, it was just getting worse and worse. And I couldn't take her to the park. I couldn't do all of these things. So we would like watch Pride and Prejudice, and I had like coloring books next to the bed, and I had like not glitter crafts, like anything that wasn't glitter was like next to the bed. And we would curl up in bed on these darling slug days, and we watched Jane Austen. And I'm sorry, my darling little child, because I'm sure you're going to have entire therapy episodes about this. But I also wanted to bring this in because I've talked to other moms who are chronically ill, and there seems to be a wide range of feeling of guilt in like, hey, we couldn't do these things. And I have almost grown-ups now, and they've both come to me and said, those are some of my favorite times. Like, you were actually able to sit down. You weren't doing 5 other things. You were curled up with me watching all of Doctor Who. We've done that a few times in this household. All of Star Trek. We are geeks here. But those were good memories for them. And I just want to put that out there because I've talked to a lot of other young people saying, and whether you have children or not, that is such a personal decision. And Mazel Tov, blessed be, all of that, whatever your choices are. I just think it's important to have a real honest discussion about this, because I've heard people say, because of this, I don't want to. And that's a valid reason. That's so valid. I just want to say, like, I want to put this out there because the media doesn't cover disabled families. So we only have these very dark ideas of what disability in a family looks like. And I just want to put out another reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also have chapters in my book about when you're a parent who's sick, with tips on how to handle that.
Some of those are right in the middle of
that.
that.
And also, though, when you have a sick child, because I run a huge group that has grown very large now online of parents with sick kids.
Talk about that. We are we had to pull my youngest out of school to put into internet school because of POTS. And you can't be in a classroom and lay down on the ground. So we're doing a whole bunch of stuff. I would love to hear more about what some of the best things you've heard about sick parents raising sick kids.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like I said, I've got a whole bunch in my book about it. So first of all, in terms of getting help, because you mentioned that, I think that a lot of our friends and family want to help but don't know what to do or how to ask. And, a friend or family member might say, like, once at the beginning, let me know if you need anything, right? But we're all afraid to ask for help. So that's part of, it's in the parenting chapter and the Plan B Day chapter is, those people that have said, oh, let me know if you need anything. Now's the time, And when my kids were young, that was really important. I mean, I remember one really horrible day early in my illness. I took my son to preschool and I could barely stand. I could barely walk him in. And I found a chair in the hallway and sat there and was literally asking the parents that came in if my son could have a play date at their house after school because I was so sick. And a wonderful mom said, yes, we'd love to have him over. So, people, I think, want to help, but they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. So help them out with that, ask for something specific. I also had a friend in the neighborhood who would always ask when she went to the store if I needed anything. And, your friend may not know to ask, but you can ask them, hey, if you're out today, could you pick this up for me? I'm not well enough to go out. So I think asking for help is a big one. And it's very hard for most of us. We're parents and, most adults really, we're fiercely independent and we think we can do everything on our own. And suddenly you can't.
I mean, especially for you, that was you have so much of my empathy on the sudden. I've been sick since I was born, so it's been a frog boiling situation. I
Right.
cannot imagine being healthy, and then this whole COVID thing just blew my mind on how much everyone had to suddenly learn how to live in a disabled body. It's not it's a skill set to be able to not just survive but thrive in chronic disability.
Yeah, absolutely. What I found interesting, like during the beginning of the pandemic, was that everyone around me, particularly some family members, were just like, oh, this is so horrible. I can't leave my house. And I was like, this is my normal life. My life.
This is my world right here. This is 50% of my life. You see my bed back here? Yep. This one room is most of my life.
My
Yeah.
life did not change much during lockdown. I mean,
Yeah.
I am normally well enough that I can go out once in a while, but I spend most of my time here. And yeah, and then having people say, well, isn't it great things are back to normal? And for me, it's like,
Normal?
things will never be normal again for me. I don't make the antibodies to COVID because my immune system doesn't work that way. And so,
And we're still on a rise. I mean, I don't know how you can look at the numbers and go, we're fine.
yeah.
Data is not up for emotional debate.
Yeah, I can't get the vaccines because I don't make the antibodies and they make me worse. And when I get it, like this summer, I still don't make any antibodies or very few. So, I wear a mask, but that's not foolproof, especially when you're the only one wearing a mask.
The mask protects me from you.
Yes,
The mask does
exactly.
not protect you from me. Like it's been amazing to see how little nuance gets through messaging and social
Yeah,
media.
yeah.
Like this is
Yeah. And I have to, avoid crowds. And so, I mean, I got COVID in early July. That week, I had one friend over to my house. I saw two other friends. A very rare occasion, I went out to dinner with them. I don't normally go to restaurants. Can't go to restaurants anymore. So, yeah, life is not normal. It never will be again post-COVID.
How has this changed how you're advertising your book? Or I assume you're not doing book tours or book signings.
No. Well, I do. I did a wonderful book event in January at a local bookstore, and that was great. So I will still do events if the bookstore is offering them. I mean, I never really had a tour anyway. Well, my book did come out though in February 2020.
Well, that definitely changes things.
Perfect.
You and Glennon Doyle.
Perfect timing, right? And no one had anything else on their minds,
Everyone's really receptive to new ideas in February 2020. I mean, all was good.
Yeah, but on the other hand, unfortunately, there is this whole new enormous audience of chronically ill people. And that's the other thing that's frustrating with people minimizing COVID is there are now millions and millions of people chronically ill from COVID, and their lives are changed forever. And, a lot of the population doesn't understand that. So many cases of long COVID are actually ME/CFS, the immune disorder that I have. As I said, it's usually triggered by an infection. COVID has turned out to be a particularly potent trigger. And so, there was a population study for ME/CFS done back in the day. Before COVID, the estimate was about 2.2 million of us in the US. Now that estimate is about 15 million. And that's long COVID. That's, all these people that and sometimes it was a mild COVID infection, but it triggered this, this immune disorder. And, now they have to live with it for the rest of their lives. And yeah, so unfortunately, there's a much larger audience for my book now. And I have tried to include the long COVID people because they're where we were 20 years ago, not knowing what's wrong with them, having doctors say there's nothing that can be done, which is not true. There are no FDA approved treatments for ME/CFS, but it's been around for a very long time. And there are lots of off-label treatments that doctors and patients have found effective. But the word doesn't get out. It's not taught in medical schools. So, I feel bad. There's this whole new population of people, a much larger population that is now chronically ill without much useful information. The patient networks online have become a lifeline for so many people. I mean, they were for us before COVID, but, if there's just this enormous population now, suddenly chronically ill and not knowing what's going on. And that way of sharing information, of sharing the latest research, sharing treatments that help, not to mention just the emotional coping side of things. Yeah. And that's where my book falls. It's not about ME/CFS specifically. It's about all chronic illnesses, and it's more on that emotional coping side of things.
So talk to me about the emotional coping side. I know that you have a very deep interest in media and in reading and books. And I'm curious, not just the writing of books, but you are quite the bookworm, which I don't know if you can see all of the available shelving space is books in this room. Is that where you find some of your escape is in books?
Absolutely. So I've always been an avid reader. I mean, from the time, my mom taught me to read with Go Dog Go when I was 4 years old. I was off and running. I've always loved books, but becoming sick and having so many things that I enjoy, my other passions are outdoor activities like hiking. We used to go backpacking, canoe camping, all kinds of things like that. A lot of that is not available to me anymore. So I found after I got sick, I really just dove into my love of books wholeheartedly. And it provided, something that I could still enjoy that's not, no, I'm lucky it's not affected by my illness. There are plenty of people with ME/CFS who find it difficult or impossible to read. I've got a chapter on that too, on how to enjoy books if you struggle with reading or you've got visual impairment, So, so I love reading. I love introducing people to books. I joined YouTube a few years ago, and I've got chronic illness videos, but also book videos. And again, the online community has been amazing, especially since often I can't get out. Sometimes when I've been really isolated at home, just sounds silly, but just setting up my camera to record a book video and talking to my book friend, even though I'm in an empty room talking to myself, it helps. It feels good, and that interaction that you get online too. So
There's an art piece that was done called, I think, The Million Missing, and it was just empty shoes. How many people are missing from the world because of ME? And it makes me think of that when you're talking about being able, because it's so, when you're stuck in a room, it makes it feel like you're a ghost. Like you're not able to, you can have opinions on the outside world. You can have things you want to say to people. So feel like you're actually casting a shadow in this world gets really hard without that ability of social media and to be able to record something vulnerable or important or just something you want to, cast a shadow in the world with. So I completely hear you with that. I did get to see your A Wrinkle in Time video, which just brought all the nostalgia to me. It's one of my favorite books to this day. I'm still angry that no movie has been done right by it, but maybe that is one of those things that just has to exist as a book.
Well, that's because you didn't see my elementary school play where I got to play Meg.
Then no, forget about this. This is a third grader thing.
Yes, that was my favorite book as a kid.
I very much hear that.
Yeah. And my love of reading ties in with my career too, because I was a professional reviewer for many years. I'm not doing that right now just because I'm taking a break, but I reviewed kids' books and media for Family Fun magazine. And then I did reviews for Publishers Weekly and Shelf Awareness. So it was a part of my career. And my kids loved it when I was doing that for Family Fun magazine because it wasn't just books, like I did a thing on pirate stuff and we got all kinds of pirate books and movies and music and games and toys sent to the house. They thought it was the greatest job ever, but
that does sound totally awesome. Do you have a comfort book that you go to?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you know what? I have a whole bookcase of books that I haven't read yet, waiting to be read.
Oh,
I don't
yes.
I do occasionally reread, but not a lot because I always feel like, I need to get to these, but I'm losing the battle. They keep piling up.
Someone told me there's like a separate word for someone who collects books. Like it's a separate hobby between collecting and reading books. And there's supposed to be a Venn diagram where the two meet. And I do have it meeting, but I feel like I have a hoarder tendency just a little bit. I sort of gather like a squirrel. So like going to the library is my joy because I can just indulge in like all the books. And, granted, like, 80% of them come back unread. But, I had my little moment of like bliss. And just to put this out here, I just want to make sure we get this out. If you live in the United States and reading books is, for me, I can't always do it. My wrists pop out. Audible is expensive. What is free is Libby. It's an app you download as part of your library. And it basically gives you all the audiobooks that you would get on Audible for free, read by the same actors and actresses. So I just wanted to put that out there. They also have Canopy and Hoopla. Those three are all free and through your library, and you can get all the content, and it's amazing. And audiobooks are valid. I will die on that hill.
Well, that's exactly what that chapter in my book is in part about.
I'm sorry. No, but buy the book.
It's available.
There's lots of important stuff over there.
It's available on Libby and Hoopla if you want to listen to it.
I know what I'm downloading for this afternoon. I'm going to be reading through. Do you have if reading, there's only like 3 books I've ever reread over and over again that aren't research books. My research books are tortured. Those poor things are cracked. But I have like 2 or 3 books that I keep rereading. Do you have like a comfort show or a comfort movie that you just go to and you're like, I am flaring so hard and I am not a human. So I'm going to go and be a slug over here and just pretend to be human. Is there like something that you can just sort of dive into?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Old Grey's Anatomy.
Sorry, McSteamy. Yes.
I had the last few years actually, since COVID came around, have been worse for me until this year. The beginning of this year was good. But so I had a few really rough years. And at some point during a really bad relapse, I went back to, we're still watching season 20 or whatever, but
they're up to 20. Oh my God.
But as
it's still going
as they air, but during this really bad relapse, I went back to season 1, episode 1, and it was absolutely delightful. I mean, the music, the humor, and yes, sometimes it makes me cry, but a good fictional cry can be very cleansing.
You just have to say Denny to me and I will start misting up. If you know, you know.
Yeah. So that is my comfort TV. And I think I'm in the rewatch. I'm up to season 13 now, I think, 12 or 13. So
that's commitment. And not that I want to talk. I mean, Doctor Who, like I very much feel that. Yeah. Before, as we're starting to run low on time, I wanted to get into a little bit about book writing, especially with chronic illness and if you have routines. One other thing I wanted to bring up with you and to see if you have an opinion on it is the NaNoWriMo and what you think about something like that. But how do you have a consistent schedule? Is this part of the plan B discussion on whether you write or not or edit or not? I just wanted to get a general idea, mostly because I have 5 finished novels that need editing and I need advice.
Oh, wonderful. Well,
oh no, not wonderful. This is so depressing and it makes me like mad, sad, scared, depressed, shameful. None of that's happy.
Well, first, it's a lot more work to write a book than you probably think it is. I discovered that. I have a half-drafted book about ME/CFS treatments because that's a lot of what's been on my blog over the years. This book was supposed to be my quick and easy book because much of it drew from essays I had already written and articles I had already written, many of them published on the Pro Health website. And so I thought, easy peasy, I'll just collate these together and I've got a book. Oh no, it's not. It was not that easy. It was a lot of hard work. Yeah. And I hired an editor, someone I had worked with before that I got along really well with, and she was remarkable. But in terms of finding the time and energy to write, that is an ongoing problem. I've gotten to the point where the other activities that I consider a part of my writing career, but they're not writing, like podcast interviews. And, promoting my book, making videos about chronic illness. I've got 2 blogs that I'm still maintaining, support groups that I run, and all of that stuff just expands to fill the space. So it's actually one of my personal issues this year is that I'm not taking much time for actual writing. And, I think you just need to make it a priority. You need to set aside time every day. Obviously, if you're in a bad crash, you're going to have to skip it. But I think NaNoWriMo's great. I have never even considered writing a novel. Novelists to me are like magical wizards. The ability to
We're
create.
crazy. We hang out with dragons and we are chaos demons. Yeah, sure. It works for me.
Yeah, that ability to create a whole fictional world, I'm just in awe of it. All of my writing for, 30 years has been nonfiction. First in my professional field of interest, and now, in chronic illness and books and family and things like that. And travel. I'm trying to do more travel writing. So I don't have a good answer to your question because I'm failing at it myself right now.
I think that's an honest answer, which makes it a good one. We can sit here, like I've done so many essays on the blog about morning routines were not meant for chronic illness. Like all these things where it's like these rigid ideas that you see like Tim Ferriss and like all of these tech bros be like, you can be like us if you just wake up at 4 a.m, take an ice bath, meditate for 3 hours, and then go for a 5-mile ride. First off, none of these people have fucking children. Like you cannot exist like this and raise people. And then you like, even if you don't have this and you have all of these, like none of them actually do this, by the way, like none of them. I will put my, not that I know these people. I did get to meet Tim Ferriss once when I was a photographer. He's a very nice man to me, but I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of what goes on social media is BS. And I think there's a lot of, hey, if you just do this, if you just write this, if you just have this as your writing style, if you just have this as your writing, anything that says the word routine, that's when I start like going,
Yeah.
First of all, I don't believe you that you do this all the time. And secondly, it's good to have frameworks. I like routines.
Right.
I just also am very clear that they're not going to happen. It's like, it's a cute mythology.
Right.
It's my myth.
Yeah.
I will do these things. That's my myth.
So I rely very, very heavily on routines, but they're routines around taking care of myself.
That's good.
Because that is the only way I can function. So I have a morning routine, but like you said, you hear people say, "Oh, my life has been transformed since I started getting up at 5 a.m." And I'm like, I got up at 8 today and I felt awful all day because that was too early for me. And once I do get up, it takes me about 2 hours to get to the point where I could actually do something productive, doing some yoga stretches and, it's all self-care. I have to have a good breakfast, all the medication as soon as I get up, after breakfast, before breakfast, Yeah.
The only thing that's worked for me as far as routine goes is I put down things that need to happen. So like I already decided what I'm going to eat for breakfast. I've decided that I need to do these exercises. These are things I need to accomplish. And it's basically just there and it happens when it happens. So I don't have like I'll do this first thing in the morning, or it's just, I just kind of like shuffle these tasks around based on energy and if I remember to do them. But it is very satisfying to make that cross off.
Absolutely. One of my routines that is an absolutely essential part of my day is taking a nap. And as you know from our scheduling issues, taking a nap after lunch, because without that, then by 4 p.m. I'm a wreck. So yeah. Everything in my life is, worked around my illness and health routines and trying to take care of myself. But, and you try to fit what you can do into the cracks. I did find instead of using a piece of paper for a to-do list, I've got a notebook with everything that needs to be done. But for a single day, I use index cards. I've got brightly colored index cards. And that way you can only write so much on one of those,
That's smart. That's really smart.
It's a way to try to keep myself from telling myself I can do more than I can.
See, this is my problem is I use the iPad with notes on it and it's endless and it does not judge me when I'm like, I get my manic phase where I'm like, I can do anything in 2 weeks. Anyone who deals with me, I'm so sorry. Because like I get into a manic phase where I'm like, oh, I could do that. Take me a week or two. No problem. This does not have any sort of stopgap. I like the idea of no cards.
And then I
That's a
I
good
can stick it in my pocket, carry it around with me, And as you said, there is no deeper satisfaction than crossing something off your list.
Now, are you the person who, if you forgot to write it on your list, you'll write it on the list just so you can cross it off?
Oh, yes, I have done that. Absolutely.
Yay, I knew I liked you. I have one last question
Sure.
for you. I was saying I always ask, it's one of my favorite questions, and I did steal it from Tim Ferriss. Is there like anything that in your life that's under $100 that's actually made a difference? And I asked that, I did, this is over $100, but I saw you wearing a watch in one of your videos. And I had to buy this because I fall down and I needed the fall detection. So this is one of the things, and it is over $100, but it did make a huge difference. But it does mean that I don't have, I have some autonomy in my life.
Right. Mine is for the heart rate monitor.
Mine too. Yeah, my child has POTS too, so I bought one for my child so that we could keep a general eye on it. If I could get my child to wear it, I would be a much happier mother.
Yeah, my son never wore his either.
Bless their hearts.
Obviously, those are more expensive. But one thing that's been really helpful to me lately, and I don't know how, I suppose it's related to my illness, but it's a back cushion. Now, I initially bought it because I'm very short. I'm only 5'1". And when I drive our SUV, the seats are too deep for me. And so the seat pushes against the back of my knees and, doesn't feel good. So I got a seat cushion just to bring myself forward a little bit. But it's ergonomic and shaped right to support your back. And I actually found I use it in my recliner where I do most of my work. I have to have my feet elevated. I can't sit with my legs down. But sitting like that with your legs straight out in front of you is actually really puts a strain on your low back. So this back cushion, although I bought it for the car, I use it in the recliner all the time. And it really helps. I have trouble with my SI joint on my right side. It gets out of place. I just saw the osteopathic manipulator last week, the doctor who does that, make sure everything's in place. But yeah, and that can cause a lot of pain. So the cushion has really helped.
I was just, you say cushion. I have like my pregnancy pillow, even though there is no way ever again, ever. That is amazing. Yeah, cushions are great. And nothing will remind you that women were not asked their opinion or then car design.
Yeah, no kidding. They are not made for 5 foot tall women.
No, I'm 5'2", and the amount of guillotining I have with you would think I was the French Revolution.
I have something for you for that too, and it costs about
oh my god, because these things keep me from actually being able to breathe in a car.
It costs about $10. It's just this it's this little clip that you put around, where the seatbelt comes like that down in an angle. You put it on there so that the belt's not against your neck.
Oh my God, you might be changing my life right now.
So that it's against your shoulder. I'll send you the link.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate you. All right, well, we are running out of time. I just want you to let everyone know what your book is, where they can buy it. We will also have direct links on our show notes, but if you're just listening to this.
Okay, great. It's Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness. So like I said, it's not about any specific chronic illness. It is about emotional coping, daily life. It is truly about finding joy in your life and satisfaction with your life, even if you are severely limited. It's packed with practical tips. It was written to be useful, not, it's not like, I hope it's inspirational as well, but it's written to be actually, of practical use. And it's available everywhere. I publish wide, so, it's available. If your bookstore doesn't have it, you can ask them to order it. It's in the main catalog that all bookstores and libraries use. So same if your library doesn't have it, but it's on all the ebook platforms, all the websites. So you can post the link to my page that has all the links to wherever you want to buy it.
We'll have that all set up. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you'll come back, especially when you get that other book done, and you'll tell us all about that as well.
Absolutely. I loved talking to you. This was fun.
Thank you so much. Be kind, be gentle, and whatever it looks like to you, be fierce. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. Did you love what you just heard? Help us reach more listeners by writing reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Are you part of a health center community? Share us there. To find out more about today's episode, including show notes, transcripts, and more, please visit invisiblenotbroken.com. In need of community? Find us on Facebook and Instagram. This episode was edited by me, Ariana Alter. Thanks for listening. Be kind, be gentle, and in whatever way it looks like for you, be fierce.